greenside wedge play. I've come out to the golf course here at Old Stone, one of my favorite spots to hit some pitch shots. Fairly flat little area to a pin that is maybe 10 or 12 paces on the green. Right? Great spot for us to discuss our basic greenside pitches and chips. And the reason we're going to start there is that if we can understand the pieces that go into hitting our medium flight, medium spin, fairway shot, that sets up the structure for us to then deviate from that to hit higher shots or lower shots from the fairway, and then take the basic technique of our greenside shots and apply it to the rough and to the bunker and to flop shots when we understand the pieces that have to function together. Now, we briefly touched on some of those pieces in our introduction to this series. Some of the pieces that are going to change are going to be some of our body alignments, some of our wrist conditions, some of our forearm rotations, some of the release through the downstroke, and some of our pivot to accommodate all those things. So we're going to touch base on all of those pieces for each of these shots. So in this video, we're going to have, again, very medium flight, medium spin, what I call just sort of our stock vanilla pitch shot. Now, another great question that always comes up is what club do I hit these shots with? And what I see the best players in the world do is they're going to go from anywhere from a 54 degree up to a 62 degree wedge. It's going to be sort of their go-to wedge, which is something I encourage most of my players to do, is to figure out a wedge that you feel really, really comfortable with and hitting most of your standard shots. The reason being is if I get comfortable with a wedge, one wedge, then I start developing a little bit of touch for how fast that ball comes out, the flight that it comes out at, the spin that it comes out at with, so that on basic fairway shots, I'm really good at predicting how that ball is going to come out. And then I've got a chance of predicting from the rough or from the sand how much that will change. Now, they don't hit every single shot with that single club. As soon as the situation dictates that they need a different one, they're certainly capable of doing that, and we're going to talk about that a little bit in this video too. The first thing that I want to cover here is our basic setup for all of our greenside wedge shots. Again, this is going to be our standard that we deviate from as we go forward in the different shots. What I have here is 5 golf balls lined up in a row. It's a great reference point for what we're going to look for in our setup. If I were to address the middle golf ball as the ball I was going to hit, what we're going to see in this video is that golf ball is somewhere around the middle of my stance. If not, I like just slightly forward of that for a medium shot. Okay, there's a couple reasons we're going to get into in here momentarily, but for setup purpose, that medium ball would be very, very centered in my stance, maybe a half ball forward, if anything. Right? And we'll see then the spectrum, and that's a word you'll hear me use, either a spectrum or a sliding scale of ball positions for standard shots off the fairway. We're going to see here is, again, that makes sense that that ball in the middle is our medium flight, medium spin. As we slowly work forward, we work into about as far forward as I would see my golf ball for a higher, softer, maybe a little spinnier shot from the fairway. As we work backwards in those 5 balls, we're going to see the ball as far back as I would have one for a lower flighted running shot before we really call it a bumper run. Right? So there's sort of our spectrum of flights and spins that we could hit using one singular club. Right? So setup, all right, let's define a few more things here. When I'm around greenside shots, my setup, will notice the distance between the heels of my feet. That's where I'll reference foot width. Heels of the feet, somewhere around 5 or 6 inches apart. Again, why that is, right? In full golf swing, they're going to be much wider to support pivoting and pressure shifts, and rotation at high speeds. So you need the stability. Right? In short game, I would much rather shoot those closer together to allow our lower body to pivot without lateral shifts, right? To accommodate what little pivot we're going to need to create speed for these shots. So we're not going to have a bunch of pressure bouncing back and forth right to left. So I don't need this wide stance to accommodate lateral movement. Right? It's advantageous that I stay centered so that I'm able to strike the ground in the same spot where I started my club on the ground. As soon as I start moving laterally, I might shift that spot a little bit. It's one of the things that I see as a fault for a lot of wedge players. Right? So the feet are going to be about 5 or 6 inches apart. We've already sort of dictated our ball position. Right? The thing that I like seeing more than others, probably, if I pull that golf ball out, I'm going to see from that position that I'm not going to have a lot of forward shaft length. Right? And there's a reason for that. If I start with a lot of forward shaft length, the majority of any stroke we make, we're going to return that club to impact with more shaft lean than we had. So I like seeing my players start fairly neutral with the shaft. As you can see, that's pretty straight up and down, or very, very medium shots, right?